Talkback is where Central Louisiana begins its conversation.
All right, everyone, welcome on in for Talkback here on your Friday morning. I'm Al Quartermont, joined this morning by Sandra McQueen. And how are you today?
I'm good. Glad it's Friday.
I was going to say, for not having had work on Monday, it still feels like it was kind of a long week, weirdly.
Well, as I always say, we just cram 5 days of work into 4 days when we get the holiday.
That is true. Yeah.
Yes, I have an unusually packed Friday.
Well, there you go. So hopefully it doesn't last too long and you can get an early end today. Maybe. And look forward to a good weekend. Should be pretty nice weather. Looks like maybe our rain is finally subsiding a little bit. We need to dry out around here, that's for sure. So thankfully we have a young man who does our yard, and he did it on, I think it was Wednesday, before all that big rain came. So we got that done. The jungle has been clipped, thankfully. So, all right, big sports day as well. This afternoon, the LSU Tigers begin their quest for another national championship when they host the regional in Baton Rouge. They'll be taking on Arkansas Little Rock, game that starts at 2 o'clock, I believe it is. And you can hear right here on KSYL. You can hear all the Tiger games throughout the weekend here on KSYL. Congratulations to those LSU Shreveport Pilots, as once again, my goodness, they are absolutely incredible. They were able to win yesterday. Final score 14-4 over Hope International at the NAIA World Series. Hope, by the way, was the defending national champs. And with that win, the Pilots are now 58-0. 58-0.
I was going to guess 60. I couldn't remember how many games they had in the playoffs, but
Not quite 60. And they can win the World Series tonight when they take on Southeastern of Florida at 8:30. So, and I know they've beaten that team already. I think they beat them the other night by a 10-run rule. So hopefully they can win that and just end with a historic note. It already is history. No other team has ever gone 58-0 in any level of college baseball. So that is pretty incredible stuff.
Very incredible. I can't believe those kids aren't being cherry-picked by LSU.
Right.
And they may be in the future. But they got a pretty good roster. LSU should come out of this weekend, I think most analysts believe, and then they'll have the super regionals, and they still look good to make it all the way to the World Series in Omaha.
Right.
And then, of course, if you're a softball fan, you've got the Women's College World Series that kicked off last night. So a big weekend for baseball and softball at the collegiate level. And we've got Oklahoma Thunder in the NBA tournament championship, and wait to see what happens with the Knicks and the Pacers.
Absolutely.
Knicks came back and won that game.
Yeah. So, we'll see what happens tomorrow as the Knicks will look to have to win on the road. I hope they come back and win that series. I just don't like the Pacers. They're just a
how funny. Team. I can't believe I would have never picked you for a Knicks.
Well, I'm not really a Knicks lover, but I was
wondering.
But I feel like the Pacers have just been a bunch of punks this year. So especially in that series against the Bucks, I didn't like the way that ended at all. So, but nonetheless, one other sports note: did you hear now they're starting a professional softball league?
No.
Yeah, Major League Baseball is partnering with it, and it's going to start, I think, June 6th, and they'll play through July. And some of their games will be carried on the MLB network. They're starting out with 4 teams. And I guess they're going to play a series of games kind of around the country and then top it off with like a championship series.
So there's not like city teams. They're just going to have a 4-team league and
that's what I'm understanding at this point. Yeah. So maybe eventually they'll get cities, but could end up being like the WNBA where it'll have to be subsidized by the MLB.
I suspect in the beginning. You're absolutely correct. The only advantage to the softball games is they're a little shorter.
Oh yeah.
So it's a nice evening at the ballpark, but it's not an all day, all night kind of thing.
Yeah, typically softball, especially at the college level, games last 90 minutes to an hour 45. Yeah. So it's really quick. Softball played at the college level is a lot of fun. In high school, it's fun to watch the women's games. So,
but didn't they remove softball from the Olympics? Am I remembering that?
I think you're right.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe that'll be part of maybe they'll try to create a movement to get it back for 2026 when they're in LA.
I know they're doing flag football.
For 28, 28 when it's in LA.
This time around, they're doing flag football.
There'll be a lot of NFL players that want to join it.
That's kind of the controversy right now is, will they use NFL players versus players that are already playing it?
Look, if you've been in a Pro Bowl, you've got more flag football experience
that's true.
than anybody else.
Oh, my goodness. That is so true. Wow. How sad that we're talking for NFL players to be flag football players because they can't compete.
Wonder if Peyton and Eli are going to coach the Olympic team.
Hey, you never know. They might. That's your guy, Peyton. All right, so it'll be a big day at the White House today. There's a news conference scheduled for 12:30 our time with the president and Elon Musk. A lot's been kind of being said about Elon Musk departing from his role with Doge, but as Trish pointed out yesterday, and I did research this is true, that the nature of the position that he was appointed to only carries with it like a 130-day appointment, which is running out. So that seems to be more what it's about. Of course, you had the interview with Elon on CBS News that's been getting some hay, and I thought his listening to it today, he was making the point, he disagreed with some of the policies of the administration, but he didn't want to voice those because he knew it would become a point of contention. Of course, the media is going to run with that. Oh, Elon doesn't agree with everything with Donald Trump, but I'm sure not everyone in the administration always agrees. That's just kind of the nature of things. So, but it seems like they're trying to kind of pit the two almost against each other now. And I don't sense that that's what's really going on. Hopefully not. I think more importantly is, why is Congress not making more of an effort to codify a lot of those Doge cuts?
Well, I think that, at least from what you hear from the reports, was one of the biggest frustrations for Elon, is that the politics of making the changes lasting and permanent. And, at the end of the day, Doge was, the president's big effort to create this efficiency, these economies of scale, reduce the size of government. But at the end of the day, did it really even scratch the surface? Not that it was, I don't want to say it was an insincere effort, but at the end of the day, it really didn't produce a lot other than you saw some reduction at USAID. You scared a lot of federal employees and got some to take, early leave, but I don't know that there's going to be anything lasting and permanent from that.
Right.
Because Congress eventually has to do their job.
That would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yes, but maybe we'll have a chance to ask Senator Kennedy.
Right. Yeah. Coming up on the show today, on that note, we can tell you that we have a couple of guests for you. At 8:05, we'll be talking with a local conservation editor, Paul Wallace, and he's got a lot of interesting history when it comes to the outdoors. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. Talked to him on the phone the other day, and he's definitely going to be someone I think you'll enjoy listening to. Then at 8:40, Senator John Kennedy is scheduled to call into the show, and we'll talk about what's going on with all the stuff in Washington. Had to laugh. The Babylon Bee's headline yesterday was, Elon Musk leaves job of making government more efficient for a much easier job of sending humans to Mars.
Outright.
So yeah, that's a good one. But it's interesting because the whole reason that Musk even bought Twitter at the time was because they had banned the Babylon Bee after they had made a joke of calling, I think it was Rachel, whoever, who's like the Assistant Secretary of Health, as their Man of the Year.
Oh, I remember her. The Surgeon General, maybe. I know you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes. The
trans person.
Yeah.
So, and someone was like, well, if you don't like it, why don't you buy it? And he was like, how much is it? And that started the process.
Get my checkbook.
Exactly. So, which, hey, look, he's undergone a lot. His company's been attacked. People's individual cars have been attacked. Dealerships have been attacked. His name's really been kind of dragged through the mud politically, but that's the nature of politics once you get into it. So he's going to kind of step back and get back to doing what he does very well. So, and we shall see what Congress does. That's the $1 million question, right? Or trillions of dollar question at this point. So
that gets the T. Yes.
Yeah. So I know Mike Johnson, the not state representative, the Congressman Mike Johnson, who is the Speaker of the House, was on Moon's show yesterday, and they were talking a little bit about the situation. So, but it's usually the typical platitudes, So, I don't know. I feel like the onus is really on the Republicans in Congress right now to do something, and so we'll see. So.
We shall see. Well, and I'm anxious, and maybe Speaker Johnson talked about this on Moon's show. What I have not quite figured out on this budget, the big beautiful bill, is it just to fund the government through the end of September?
Yeah, I don't know.
Or is it actually funding the fiscal year that will end in 2026? I have a feeling it only funds the government through September 30th of this year, but we need to ask Senator Kennedy what budget we're actually funding, because that's the whole point of a CR. They never passed a budget for this year.
That's true. That's a good point.
So what's that going to mean for next year?
Inquiring minds want to know. So.
Well, at least I do. Funny, I'm a little nerdy and in the weeds, but I do think it's a good question to understand what we're funding here.
Absolutely. And as I peruse through Twitter every day, I see people getting more and more frustrated, just kind of with the congressional reps and what really they just aren't doing, which I understand that right now the Republicans have a very slim margin in the House, and that limits it somewhat. But at the same time, they don't start doing some stuff, people are going to get disillusioned. So, all right, we'll take a break. More Talk Back coming up here on this Friday.
Talkback is sponsored by The Clinics with 27 providers and 3 locations. Someone can see you today. Stick around. More of Talkback is on the way.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Dell has benefited from demand for its high-power servers that run artificial intelligence systems. Now the company has delivered a profit outlook for the year that beat estimates. For the latest quarter, Dell sales beat expectations, but earnings missed. Ford says its plan to make electric vehicle batteries at a new site in Michigan would be put at risk if Congress cuts federal incentives for clean energy. Executive Chair Bill Ford said the plant and the 1,700 workers that Ford plans to employ there would be imperiled if U.S. lawmakers move to eliminate tax credits that support battery producers as part of a broader tax plan. A federal appeals court offered President Donald Trump a temporary reprieve from a ruling threatening to throw out the bulk of his sweeping tariff agenda. Today, President Trump will hold a news conference at the White House alongside Elon Musk to mark the departure of the world's richest man from his official role leading an effort to slash the size and scope of the U.S. government. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
If you'd like to take part in the show today, call the BON Bank Talk line.